On this video, I'm going to show you how I've been using Copilot with Dataverse. I've been doing some tests based on some of the requirements that I've been having from different clients. Not for Copilot, for Power Automate, but I thought that maybe with Copilot I could do something similar or even improve the solutions that I have delivered already for those clients. The idea behind the agent that I'm going to show you and the reason why I'm building this agent, or at least testing it, comes from the lessons learned after a project is closed. Basically, what happens in many companies, especially big companies, manufacturing companies is also really common. When you have a project or an improvement that has been established, let's say on your manufacturing line, you need to capture that. So whenever a new line is designed or a new part of the line needs to be redesigned or changed or anything like that, you need to capture those lessons, those improvements that you did in the past, or those lessons from the projects that you did in the past, so that in next projects you know all of those lessons and you know the impact that they had, so that you can decide if you want to implement the same learnings from those projects or you need something completely different. How do I think that this agent should work? And I'm going to show you how it works and how I was thinking of it in my mind. Bear in mind, this was done in a couple days, so it's something that can be for sure improved, but at least you'll get an idea of what you can do with a Copilot whenever you need to connect it to a Dataverse in this case, but any other database that you want to use. The idea that I was having in mind was that I would be able to chat with this agent the same way I would be able to chat with a colleague of mine in Teams, and I would be able to tell them, hey, I just finished a project, this is what the project was about, this is the things that I've learned, and it will automatically capture that conversation and input that into Dataverse. Inside Dataverse, I have different tables that I have built, and inside those tables, I will be able to capture the project, and then I will be able to capture the lessons learned from those projects. Then, with that information, the same agent would be able to go into those tables, review the projects that we had in the past and what they were about, which tools or machines were involved, or which systems inside the company, and what were the lessons for those projects, so that whenever I'm about to ask for lessons learned from previous projects, whenever I need to start a new project, I can just go to the agent and be like, hey, I need to start a new project. The project is going to be about this, this, and that. What can you tell me about lessons learned in the past from previous projects that had something similar to do with this? And the Copilot will gather all the lessons learned from past projects and send them to me and tell me, hey, these are all the lessons that I have found. The more detail I'm able to provide, the more detail Copilot is going to provide me back, and maybe more specific lessons. But the idea basically is that I will chat with it to input all the lessons learned from my project, and I will also chat with it to get more inputs from previous projects that I can use on my new projects. Let me show you how it works. Right now we're in Copilot Studio. I haven't published this agent. It doesn't work as good as I would like it to work, but it's good enough, at least to get the idea of how Dataverse works. Okay, and then I'm going to go into very specific details on what are the instructions that I provided, the knowledge, the actions, all of that. But first of all, let's see what the idea would be behind. So we have it here. I trigger the conversation with it, and I'm like, hey, I just finished a project. And with that, and you can see now what the Copilot is thinking in the back, it will go to my knowledge, it will go to my actions, and it will decide what to do. I haven't forced any of the topics. What I wanted to do is that the agent is able to decide what to do next based on the instructions I have provided and the actions that it has available. So hey, that's great. Congratulations on completing your project. Could you please provide me the title and a brief summary of the project? Objectives, scope, all of that? Sure. So title is going to be the best project ever. And here it would depend on your situation. If you wanted that the title is something very specific with numbers and stuff like that to identify it better, fine. This is just a test so that you could see how it works. So this is the title and the scope, the best project we have ever done in this company, and it covers all the systems. Okay, now what this agent should be doing right now is gathering that title and that scope, and it should be inputting that into the Dataverse table that I have for the projects. After that, it's going to ask me for the lessons learned. And the idea is that based on the actions that I have provided, it first gathers the inputs on the project, all the information that it might need, and then asks me for the lessons learned for that project. And what I'm going to tell him is lessons learned are that great projects take time. It will grab this and then it will input this into the Dataverse. But as you see, I have an issue here. I already have the first error that we get. And let me see if it's able to even get me the details. No. Okay. I will explain you why I get this, and it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. For now, I'm going to show you how you can use Dataverse with your Copilot, and then I'll explain you what the issue is here and what are the things that I have in mind to try to solve this. It could be solved by using topics, but I didn't want to use topics for this agent because I was just testing how good I'm able to prompt the agent and provide instructions for it to work with whatever actions it has without having to force any topics that I know exactly what it's going to do and how it's going to do it. Let's start with the overview and let me show you the instructions. First of all, and you can pause the video and read through, I have provided quite a broad description. This has nothing to do with the agent itself. This is more in case I want to use this agent inside another agent, or for me just to know what this agent is all about. The important part are the instructions. And I'm going to tell them that this agent is the best resource that I have for project managers to retrieve information about lessons learned in other projects. Now, when a project manager has to launch a new project, it will ask them what the project is about, and then based on their answers, it's going to gather whatever information we have in the database and bring it back to me. Let's do a test. I am going to start a project on heat recovery. Let's see what we get. I know that I have in my database projects and lessons learned regarding heat recovery. Now, will Copilot find it or not? That's the question. Because I have other words that I also know are in the database and that it always has some issues finding them. So it times works and sometimes it doesn't work. We'll see. Okay, we know that it's reading the knowledge that we have and it has found no results. So what it's going to start doing is hallucinating. It's basically going to tell me something that has nothing to do with the information that I have in my database. Let me show you what I have in my database. Inside my projects table, we have all of this. Now here we have the input from before, the best project ever, the best project we have ever done in this company, and it covers all the systems. So we know that whatever we provide to this Copilot is able to input that information at least into this table. We saw before that it cannot do it yet into another table that we have for the lessons learned. That's something I'm trying to figure out yet. Now, I know that I have something here about heat recovery. For some reason, it wasn't able to figure this out. If I were to copy all of this title and I put it, it probably is going to be able to tell me something. But let me see what other things we have here. We have a lot of things on furnaces. We also have some things in cooling systems, cooling towers, cooling, chillers, some automated guided vehicles, forklifts, rails, overhead. Okay, let's ask something about cooling. And you can see that for now, it's not really good. The idea is that the more details you have in the database for it to look into, the more details I can provide to the agent, and the easier it's going to be for it to bring me some lessons learned. So I'm going to start a project around cooling. Is it how it was written. Yes, let's say cooling. Let's see what's able to gather out of that. We let it think, it's looking through our sources, and we can see that now it has found at least 2 things. Okay, so I have identified 4 projects related to cooling. This one, this one, this one. It's 3, not 4. But hey, we're getting there. So what would you like the lessons learned from these projects? All of them. Let's see. All of the lessons available for those projects. Let's see what we get. And there's my famous D that I always put it the other way around. No results found. So it's not able to bring me what I have from the lessons learned. And again, it's going out of its way and it's starting to hallucinate a little bit on what to do. You can see that, hey, it grabs whatever titles I had here, and then it decides to give me something that has nothing to do with the lessons learned. Okay, how do I know this? Because I just have 1 lesson learned for each project just to test how this works. What I have found is that whenever I'm trying to do this, and these are really quick investigations, the more information I have into the database, the easier it's going to be for the Copilot to be able to find what it needs to find. What does that mean? So if in my project, I have project name, I have project description, but I could also have like project manager, I could have like what tools are related to this project, what machines are involved in this project. The more fields I can have with more information related to a specific project, and then provide that I'm going to start a project on cooling for this project manager that I don't have, that it's going to use this same machine, the easier it's going to be for Copilot to find that information. Let's go through the knowledge. On the knowledge, I have both of the tables, one for project and another one for lessons learned. Okay, let's go into project. Inside project, I have to provide a description for this project. And what I have done, instead of gathering the description that I have from Dataverse, I have input a very specific description. So this table stores information about each project undertaken by the manufacturing company. It includes details such as the project name, description, start date, end date, the project manager responsible for overseeing the project, all of that. So it knows that whenever I provide some of that information, it can go to this knowledge base and look for those details. What I have tried back and forth is providing more details on the description and less details on this description. And it depends more on how much information I have into the Dataverse than actually on the knowledge description. The same happens for the other knowledge base. And you could also input here some instructions on how to use this knowledge. Inside the preview, you will always see, I think it's like the top 20 entries on your database. And if you grab a whole project that you have multiple tables connected and not just table by table, you will be able to see all the tables that you have here. And this is the most important part, synonyms. Inside synonyms, you actually have the description of the columns that you have on your database. This is crucial. You have to grab all the fields that you have, especially the ones that you know have the information you're looking for, and provide a really good description of those fields so that Copilot is able to come here, look for that field and be like, hey, what is this field about? This field is about, hey, this is the date on which the project was completed. Okay, so I know that if someone talks about a reference of a project being completed on a certain date, it can go to this field and look for it. The same for other fields. We have the project description, a brief summary of the project objectives and scope, I'm going to guess. Scope, there you have it. The project ID, a unique identifier. Project manager, I don't have it, so it doesn't know how to use this field. That's something to have in mind. The project name, all the information that you want to provide, and I recommend you provide at least all the descriptions for the fields that you know you're going to be using yes or yes. For example, the project ID, probably I don't need it because it's going to be quite complicated for someone to be able to tell, hey, can you provide me the lessons learned on this project? And by that project, provide the ID. I don't think anybody's going to do it. So probably it's not as important to provide that description, but it is really important to provide the rest of the descriptions. You could also add synonyms. The synonyms, I'm still playing around to see how exactly to use it, because if you provide a really good description, you shouldn't need synonyms, but it can happen. It can be that, hey, for project ID, somebody might mean something different. For example, for end date, instead of end date, somebody might be looking for completion date or closure date or things like this. So you could add that information into the synonyms and use that for the Copilot to know exactly where to look into. And finally, you have the glossary that I haven't used yet, and I still haven't played around with it. So I'm not going to explain it to you because it's pointless. Now, in the topics, I don't have any topics. The idea with this agent, and that's why I see such a variety of results, is that I wanted to provide only actions and knowledge. And then I was challenging myself to provide the best descriptions, the best instructions to the agent for it to know how to use that knowledge and those actions. You can see there's room for improvement, quite a lot. On the actions, I have two actions: add to close project and create new lessons learned. Let's start with add to close project, and then we go into what I think it's not working properly on the lessons learned. If we go into each one of the actions, they all work the same. The only thing that it's going to change is what description are you going to provide it. What you need to make sure, first of all, if you're going to use the same connector, and this is something that happens here, this connector is add a row into a Dataverse table. You need to make sure you change the display name and the action name. Otherwise, it's going to pop up errors of actions with the same exact name and doesn't know what to do. Even if you have a good description on how to use each of them, it doesn't know what to do. Then, in the description, you need to provide it when this action needs to be triggered. Here, what I do is, hey, when a project has ended, you will use this action to capture the details of the project that has ended. Easy. So whenever I go to the chat and I'm like, hey, I just finished a project, it knows that it needs to trigger this action after it. You could include details here, and I've been playing around with it. Things like trigger this action right after another action. And you have to put the display name and the action name for that to work. And it works. It will do it automatically without you having to have any other input. So you could potentially put all the instructions on, let's say you have an SOP of do this and that and that, in the description of all these actions. So you could be like, hey, trigger this after the previous one, and after you're done with this one, trigger the next one. And in the next one, you're like, trigger this one after the previous one. So you could just send them from one action to another without having to go through topics. This is awesome. This works. The other thing that you have to have in mind is the inputs. In the inputs, you will need to have the environment that you're using, the table name that you're using, and the rest of the fields that you want to include. In this case, I had project name, and it's going to be whatever I input into the text, and it's up to Copilot to decide. And the same with the project description. But for the table and the environment, I can input a specific field, a specific value that I want to make sure it's always that one. So if you have two actions for different tables, you need to make sure that one action is for one specific table and another action is for another specific table. I would recommend that you always use this. Make sure you always input the specific table you want to work on. Basically, because you will have fields that you will want Copilot to fill. And if each table has a different structure, you will need those inputs. And it's going to be complicated for Copilot to know what to do with those inputs unless you're really, really good at chatting with it. And therefore, you probably don't need all of this. But I don't think anybody of us likes to write 2,000 words or characters to chat with Copilot. Finally, you have the outputs. I don't have anything here. It's just whatever is going to trigger me back whenever this action is done. Now, I'm going to leave because I didn't do no changes. If I go to the other one, I'm not going to go into the inputs. It has the same structure, so the name of the table and the environment, but we have the description and we have it here. After a project has been documented, you will ask the user all the necessary inputs for this action and then trigger this action. Use the same exact project title that in the previous action. So This action is going to be triggered after a project is documented. So whenever I say the project has been closed, it's going to grab that information, put it into the table for the projects, and then trigger this action after it has asked me for the lessons learned, not before. That's a mistake I did in the past, and it's not able to keep moving forward because it triggers the action, but it doesn't have input, and it goes in circles saying that it's an error, and it triggers it again, and it's a little bit of a mess. So make sure you ask first from the inputs you want for the action and then trigger the action. The problem that I see here is that this part here. Use the exact project title that in the previous actions. It's not able to understand what I'm trying to tell here, and for now I haven't found a solution. What I think we could be using in the future are entities. So whenever I input the title, Copilot could be able to define that as an entity and then use that title on the subsequent actions that I need to trigger for something specific. Why I need that? Because the inputs that I need here, I need to be able to relate the project to the lesson learned. And in order to relate that project to the lesson learned, I go into the tables of lessons learned, and one of the fields that I have is the name of the project. So I need to also have that as an input for it to know inside which rows it has to look into. And that's about it. Now, some of the things that I have found and some of the lessons learned from this experiment is that whenever you work with databases and Dataverse specific, you need to be very clear on what each field stands for, so provide really good descriptions. But you also need to be very clear on what instructions you provide to your agent so that it knows what to do in each moment. So if you're not able to have something like an SOP on whenever this is done, use this action, and then for this action you need to input all of these, and you will find this information here. This will be provided by the user. All of that information, it's going to be very difficult for the Copilot to know what to do, or it will know what to do, but then it will not have the inputs that it needs, and it will just start hallucinating and giving results that you don't want. How can you go around all of that? You could try to use entities. I haven't played around with them, but in theory, Copilot is able to identify specific things that you tell him and define those as a specific entity. Things like, hey, if you are talking and you just happen to write an email, it's able to identify that that was an email. And then with that, it just will save that information to reference it in the future in the rest of the conversation that you have. So you could theoretically create your own entities for specific things, like a title of a project in this case. And you could reuse that information in the actions that you have. So that's a workaround, and I'll keep on testing that to see how it works, and I'll let you know. But for now, I haven't tested. What I've been doing these past weeks is learning a lot, testing things, and there are more videos that I will bring about learning new things and how to work with Copilot, the best way to provide instructions and prompting and all of that. And also how it works with certain connectors, how it works with certain systems, because there's many things that are still in the air, to say it somehow. So, hey, let's learn together. And for now, I leave you a video up here where you have all the lessons of these past 30 days. I hope you like it.